Speaking of tough questions, apparently, and Canucks related as well, Jim Benning apparently, after proclaiming that they were working on re-signing Tanner Pearson, 26 days later, they apparently finally reached out to him. I guess they finally got to Tanner Pearson's name on the to-do list 25 days later.
Mhm.
And reached out to start talks about working on an extension. Which brings us to a viewer or listener question from Marcus Meyer 27. What is the absolute maximum you would re-sign Tanner Pearson for? Um,
Are we so I think there's two I think there's two schools of thought here, because it's how much would you be willing to pay and how many years would you be willing to give, which can kind of go in different
yeah,
directions, right?
sure. Like, what would be the? Because I mean, yeah, what's the worst contract you'd be willing to give him? What's the best contract, or what? Like, what would you personally re-sign him to? I I see his current deal is one, like he's got 1 year left, or sorry, his current deal is 3.75 million or whatever for this deal. I
Mhm.
imagine he's going to want something kind of similar to what Tyler Toffoli got, or just a marginal raise on his current deal. And I assume at his age, at 28, he's probably going to want a form of trade protection, which, I mean, hey, Jim Benning has no problem giving trade protection out to his players. No issue
Okay.
there. Uh,
We'll talk about that in a bit.
yeah. So I think for me, the the highest I would be willing to go, and it's a deal he will never sign, is 2.225.
2.225, and then like how many years would you give for that
Two
sort of
years.
deal?
Two
Two
years.
two two at 2.5. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
I'd be I
Okay.
would I would be pitching to him, Tanner. It's a flat cap. There are going to be very few teams looking for a middle six forward uh, at the value that you're currently expecting. Like, you're going to have to take a discount. So if you don't want to move again and you want to keep on building with what you've got with Pearson, or sorry, with Horvat and
He's
Hoglander
Pearson.
and Miller, yeah, I'm Tanner Pearson. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Uh, I would I would be. I mean, it's a low ball. Don't get me wrong, but you have to if you're
I'm gonna
Jim
say,
Benning
okay. Are you
with
coming?
the,
Well, okay. If you're Jim Benning, if you are making that
oh,
trade,
if
you
I'm Jim
say two
Benning,
and a half. If you're,
I'm offering him 4 years and
I'm saying if you,
$6 million
okay,
dollars.
okay. If you're the GM, is that your low ball offer, or is that your I am
Oh,
not willing to budge off this
sure.
ledge? So
That's my
because
that's
like,
my not willing to budge number. My low ball would be like,
oh my god.
here's a league minimum deal at 1 year, right?
Okay, well then you're Okay, well then you're gonna lose in that way.
Yeah,
For
but like
sure.
your contract starts somewhere, so you'd be like, okay, no one's going to sign you to a 4 year, $4 million contract. I'd be like, hey Tanner, uh, the only person that's going to sign you to a 4 year deal is me, and I'm not going to do it this time. So here's my next best offer, and it would be,
I think what sorry, just to correct you there, I think the actual what he'd actually say is, I want to give you that much, but I've
yeah,
already given 6 to Tyler Meyer. So
yeah,
sorry, I've already
yeah,
given 6 million out this year for Louis Erickson, so I can't give it
yeah.
to you.
I can't give it to you
Um
because it's tied up to Jay Beagle or Michael Furland or
here,
Tyler Myers or Braden Holtby. Like, uh, just
so
do yourself a
for
favor, guys. Don't look at Cap Friendly's page in your spare time. It
it'll
just
depress
is
you.
the most depressing thing to ever read.
Okay. I'd be
What would you be? So my number as like my I won't push past, but this is 2 years at 2.25 with no trade protection whatsoever.
okay.
What's your I'm not willing to budge number?
So okay, so he's making 375 right now, 3.75 right now. And like you said, he might want something closer to like what Toffoli's getting, which is currently 4.5, or sorry, 4.25 million right now.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd hit 4 million, especially when
No.
you consider that, Toffoli's last contract was 4.6. So he did take a discount from his last contract with the Kings. I
Yeah.
think Pearson would take a discount, I would be willing to bring back Tanner Pearson at around 3 million. I'm comfortable with that. He's 28, so he's still south of 30. I think if I've got that, if I'm using the compass directions correctly on in that analogy. I always forget which one is considered north, which one's higher or lower. I guess technically north is would be the higher one, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
So he's south
his
of 30.
birthday is in August, so technically,
So he'd be
if you're
29 when the
doing it,
contract kicks
the
in.
contract would be his age 29 and age 30 years for mine.
Right. Okay. So I would say here I would be willing to bring him in if we're talking he wants more, if term is more important than the money. I'd be willing to bring him the money's more important than the term. I'd be willing to bring him in at about 3 million, maybe 3.25 for like if we're looking at maybe something like closer to what you had, like 2 or 3 years. I think 3 I would be my max on that. But if he wants more term than money, I could look at going lower and closer to like the 2.5 million. Because here's the thing with Pearson is he's a good top six player, and
Mm.
this year has been a struggle for him. But even when he's doing okay, like even when he's not doing super well, he's still a really valuable asset in at both ends of the ice, which is something the Canucks need desperately.
Yeah,
And I could see him being the type of player who is technically depth, but can still actually jump up and contribute with the top scorers when necessary, and give
right.
you the third scoring line, and help you get a third scoring line going that you desperately need. I could see him being a bigger, like the piece to a bigger contender, as where he would be lower on the totem pole at this point. He'd be not there. He would not be in the top six on a regular basis, but you would
Yeah,
have a third line chipping in regularly and being
yeah.
an offensive
On a very
contributor.
good team, he'd be like a great bottom six piece, basically.
Yes, which is what I'm looking at, because I think you can justify giving him closer to like that 3 million if it's like on a 2 to 3 years, because he's still got youth, he's got scoring ability,
He's
he
he's streaky, but like he has the proven ability to play up in the lineup, which is kind of what they need, is someone who can slide up. Because I mean, look at the current roster as it's constructed right now. They lose Elias Pettersson, they lose Adam Gaudette, and then their top six looks like Jimmy VC as your top line winger, and Travis Boyd is your like second line or third line center. Like they don't have the depth to accommodate these kinds of losses. Like Tanner Pearson, like if Patterson's gone and they move up, like you still have Tanner Pearson, who's going to be like an okay piece in your top six.
yeah.
Whereas without Pearson, without Patterson, suddenly it's like you got nothing, and the coach doesn't trust any of the pieces. Like he barely trusts Gaudette in like a line with JT Miller in sheltered minutes. So
Yeah. And I think as you get stronger and some of your younger guys start coming up and chip and getting better cracks, how good does that team look all of a sudden when you have like when you have a decent guy playing on that second line as well as Miller, and you have Tanner Pearson on that left side. Suddenly that's
yeah,
a good looking left wing. It's
yeah,
just and so I think if the Canucks have the ability to bring him back. Again, this is mostly contingent also on the idea that they move out some money from other
yeah,
places first,
which is
because
a big ask for this
which is
group.
which is a huge ask. But I would also be willing to go like longer if he wants something closer to like 4 or 5 like years. Like I'd be willing to go, okay, we're gonna have to bring it closer to the 2 million range. If you want that long, and there's going to be less trade protection
Yeah,
on that. But at the same time, that contract is going to be a little bit more movable even if things go wrong. Because like you said, like everybody, there's a lot of teams that would want a Tanner Pearson. He's not even when he's not doing well. Again, he's
yeah,
does not make a lot of mistakes on the ice. Like there are not a lot of times when he plays where you're like, oh, Pearson completely messed that up or something like that. He doesn't. He's not that kind of player, generally speaking. He's very accident proof, and any team will pay for that. Even if things go haywire on that contract, there you can move that.
You'd probably have to retain a bit, because it is a big deal. Like 3.75 for a guy you're obtaining to be a utility piece in your bottom six who can maybe move up during playoffs. 3.75 is a lot, and a lot of the Canadian teams don't have space except for the Senators, and they're not contending anytime soon, right? So
But even if you retain, you're only retaining about like because I think mine was I said 3.25 I think is what I went with. That's still only about that means you're only if you were retaining the most you possibly could. That's 1.12 million. That's not it's not great, but it's not like undoable. You know, like it's
sure,
not a
it's
killer.
it's better than, say, like Jake Virtanen's like backloaded deal or something like that, right? Where
Right.
suddenly you have, like, you can't really retain it because the cap hit itself is fairly low, but because it's so backloaded, like no owner really wants to take on that kind of money in this economy.
No.
Yeah.
That's
So
why you got to
anyway,
look that and this all goes back kind of to the team construction aspect of it is as your team gets better, the better your team gets and the more the players can see the writing on
mm,
the wall of what your capabilities are, the more likely they are to take team friendly contracts. I mean, look at Tampa. That team is just filled with
well,
contracts well below value
to be
because
fair, though, Tampa's tax rate is like a joke. So
okay.
they did the math, and it was like, what's his name? JT Miller's deal was worth like $7 million if it was in Canadian, like if it was in like Vancouver's market. That's how like much of a benefit was to play in a market like with such low tax rate as Florida. So they
Right.
look like hometown deals, but in reality, they get way more out of their money. And I mean,
But I think when
you
you're a
can't.
contending team, like if you're a good team, I think players could care less in the sense of like if they can see, hey, you're only a piece away from winning a championship or something or being a true championship contender. I think players are willing to be like, I don't care about the taxes. I want my damn ring. Like they're flexible on that kind of stuff. And also I do think I've definitely there, and I've seen articles on this before. That there are ways to get around the tax issues, like in terms of like getting creative with how your contracts are structured in certain ways that you do them. There are ways to get around the issues with playing in high tax places, and I believe the article I saw at the time was in regards to the Montreal and the Canadiens, which I believe has the highest tax rate in North America.
Mhm.
So, and they were like talking about how there are ways you can do it. You can structure a deal so that it does not affect the tax rates on the players nearly as much, and it looks a lot more close to what you would get in a place like Florida or something where the taxes are next to nothing. So
Fair enough.
again, it comes back to can you build a team well equipped to go far in the playoffs that players would be willing to take a little less money to go after chase a championship, and do you have a management group that is creative enough to find good solutions to tough issue to cap issues and flexibility issues, which right now I'm going to have to say is no. So
Yeah.
it's a
Since
matter of can you fix that? And if you can do that, there's a lot more you can do and the possibilities go wide open. So I wouldn't mind Tanner Pearson on the right contract.